Jay and Ken are not here with us. Okay. Well,
I'm here.
oh, you are. Thank you.
Yeah. Hi.
Are you on the phone?
I have to be on my phone because I can't seem to open up the link on my computer.
Okay. All right. Well, we won't be able to spotlight you, but we're very happy that you're here. Okay. And is Ken's not here? Okay. All righty. Thank you all for being here. I wanted to talk a little bit about the upcoming kind of what the AEU is looking towards in terms of the future, and wanted to bring to our attention, intentionally kind of lift up the leadership or potential leadership that would be taking us through this beautiful journey, this new path forward. And it's in that intention that I bring you and other board members to this fishbowl. And I wanted to talk about some specific things, but also some very, bigger, harder questions. I wanted to talk about the work, what keeps you in the work. A lot of times we talk about legacy, and that keeps a lot of people in the work, but as younger people, what is your why? And I know that this is a question I think I have to attribute Christian for Hayden Softy for that. That's a beautiful question.
Still waking up. My why is, for me, the Ethical Society in Baltimore, where I'm a member, has been a community. As someone who grew up in a very religious country, a community where I feel, safe to speak about and share certain things. And I think the why is that more people deserve to have those spaces, right? And we need to make it so that more people do feel welcome in these spaces.
I can go next. My why, having grown up in the movement and having really been developed through my formative years, my story is very similar to Julia's. In fact, we met each other when we were 14, so we've known each other for a pretty long time throughout this whole development through this movement. And I'd say that my why is really those finding supports me through the milestones and throughout the things of life.
I know you're cutting out.
Oh, sorry.
I know. It's okay.
I'll let Jay go.
Okay.
All right. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
All right. Perfect. My biggest, I can't really tap into like fully my why. I'll be honest about that. No need to lie. But I because I think in some aspects I have multiple, so it wouldn't be a one word. But I always just remember my time in coming into Riverdale, and I always say I came in during a lecture, and I think it wasn't the lecture that got me. It wasn't possibly the congregational family or anything. I actually didn't feel like it was my style. And then it took Liz, at the time, Liz Collier, grabbed me, and it was the eliteness on her face, and it was the actual experience of radical hospitality that I experienced from this one person. And this was a person who grew up in ethical culture all of their life and was willing to share that with me with so much enthusiasm, with so much visioning. And I'll be honest, I think after that, it was that relationship, that building a relationship that created and inspired me to always maintain a see, kind of bring that same enthusiasm back to the movement. Mine is not because I found something in it. It was because I found something in one person who had all of those things. And I've always wanted to keep that alive. And so I think in some aspects, I love to keep the movement alive, because I don't think there is not a way to have an ethical living unless you are actually fully alive. And that is what I'm always after. And that's why I stay in this movement, because I do believe in aliveness. And I believe that we are a very alive people, and that we are very in touch with ourselves when we give ourselves the opportunity.
Thank you. Anthony, did you want to jump in, or should I move on to another?
Sure. I mean, there's so much brilliance in this space. Yeah, my why is we have to continue doing the work of the practice of becoming human. There's not one universal model to being or becoming human. It's always this invitation towards deeper critical relationality that we are urgently in need of. And as a person who has spent part of my youth basically migrating and moving across communities, states, and nations, I see more and more people like me and very different from me, and yet very similar, right? That are always doing this deep inquiry about who are they in relationship to the developmental spectrum of what they are experiencing. And in my current positions, both as an associate clergy at the Ethical Culture Society, in other non-theist organizations, and even other theist spaces, my why is more centered around the curation of human experiences and really bridging the gaps of divides.
Thank you. I'm curious if I'm going to just throw out a few things and speak to what resonates with you. What is your vision of the AEU in the future? Are there any scenarios that you've become familiar with that you think would result in the best outcome? Talking about your leadership style, if someone could speak to those issues, that would be really helpful.
I think some of the things that I'm really interested in, I mean, as kind of one who thinks about our process as enhanced, I think there are some things that I would really like for us to kind of really focus on, which is to bring forth actually younger voices. And I'm not just saying younger voices from the standpoint of like myself. I'm actually talking about undergrad and high school, because they need a framework to find their way to this movement. And so I hope to revitalize a lot of that effort with Anthony, who's at Tufts, to really begin to start doing what Adler did from the very beginning, starting these collegial institutions, right? And that was a brave move, which also entailed and formed healthy leadership. So, right, when we start that young, we start informing healthy leadership. And then what we have probably even a stronger and more present and accountable, fully on board, all hands on deck kind of clergy team, right? And so we are able to enhance our clergy as well, because we are starting even younger. What we need for our wisdom bearers to do, and I'm talking about those who identify above 60. Okay, what I need my wisdom bearers to do is I need y'all to continue to be the midwife to this congregation and to this formation that is an institution, right? And that we nurture and foster those relationships like our mission says, and then hopefully elicit enough of a structure that we actually do have a future as ethical culture, right? But that takes commitment. It takes an intergenerational commitment, right? And that the buck doesn't stop with you, it continues forward. And in addition to that, allowing for young people to bring out a lot of programs. I think we're in a need of enhancing our education program. I think we're in the need of completely rebuilding it, right? And that's a whole nother thing. I think we are in a space where we also need to engage more, be more robust with our ethical action, because I find that our ethical action is more of a response team, and not as foreseen as what we can already kind of predict when we look at certain things. We have so many brilliant people in our movement that I would love to see us engage that foresight more, and those hypotheses that exist in our communities that then seem logical and prophetic and so on and so forth, that reach beyond belief and be like, wow, how did we, that I never saw that in that way. We have a way of offering perspective as ethical humanists in this space. So that's how I would start. That's how I kind of see the future. That's how I kind of see some of the structuring of it, in brief.
Yeah, I'll say that, I mean, expanding on what Jay is saying, I had the opportunity of presenting at the Secular Student Alliance actually a few weeks back. And that was such a brilliant, amazing, and very deeply meaningful experience, because I was able to see across the spectrum of non-theist communities showing up into the space, trying to really understand what are some of the needs, experiences, and care that young adults need, not just kids, not just children, but people who are already engaging in the work of doing institutional transformation, right? And so, for example, how are we taking serious the opportunity for collaboration, guidance, both with colleagues and mentors, which is a huge platform of framework, of mine, right? How are we becoming mentors? And not just saying, I am a mentor and I'm imposing my knowledge and wisdom on you, but it's this deep relationship where the youth, young adults, and others that are side by side with me recognize, right, that I'm able to provide to their world something that is deeply meaningful. And so in this time of flux and uncertainty has been named already in the space, how do we build on capacities that are contextual, that are sensitive, that are creative and effective in our leadership and our social praxis? Meaning that I am not just doing philosophical work in my room, drinking coffee and talking with other brilliant people with degrees and PhDs and what have you. No, like Jay said, I am talking to, for example, my younger sister who's 20, right? And even learning from her on a daily basis. What is the lingo? What are the languages? What are the things that you're experiencing that even though we're just 10 years apart, I'm already somewhat removed from that experience that she, of course, is having, even in her own first relationship with her partner, right? So being proximate to that dimension. And as I close, also the understanding that in my case, I'm not just moving in one particular setting, I'm always in relationship with multiple spaces, congregations, and societies across the US and beyond North America. And I think that that is crucial work that I think we're even behind on.
Yeah, I'll piggyback off of what Anthony said. I totally agree. As someone that is largely connected to humanist communities far beyond just this one, we really dropped the ball when it comes to connecting. And for a movement that prioritizes relationships, my vision is to bring us back to that and really walk the walk with the eliciting the best in others and prioritizing connection with one another. And that's why I think this slate is something kind of unique for this movement, because we actually really prioritize collaborative leadership, leading shoulder to shoulder, standing next to each other and not standing, so that there's this hierarchical structure, which is currently how the AEU operates and has done for a number of years. We really reinforce a hierarchical structure that ends up really being a top-down dictatorial type of thing, whereas we really, our values more align around this grassroots structure where we're really, trying to build our values from the ground up. And so my vision for our future is to really get back to that, essence of ethical culture. And that's why I personally really support this regeneration plan. Not only does it allow us to find a way to return to that, but find a way to return to that in the times that we are in now, and it buys us more time. I think that's one thing that really hasn't been said, is that that plan buys us more time to figure out how to be in relationship now, and not 1950, not 1960, not back when everyone was going to Sunday school. We're talking about now, just like the ethical educators were saying, like, kids are not showing up on Sundays. So how do we engage young people and frankly help them, guide them through the crises that are overlapping and are going to create some pretty frazzled adults? So we could play a very important role in that. And that is really overall my vision for the future of this movement, is relationships and ushering young people through this very, very challenging time that we're all facing.
Yeah, I don't think I could say much more. Collaboration and really earnest collaboration, right? Valuing differing perspectives. And I know people look at us and say that we're young, but to Anthony's point, I mean, if he's 10 years out from, I'm a decade out from Anthony, right? So it's really important, I think, to listen to those perspectives that aren't in the room because of structural reasons. And so one of the things I really value about the regeneration period is that it really is trying to bring in everyone, right? Let's hear from everyone about what they want, what they need from this network, this union, and build a framework based off of that, right? Based off of what we need now, not what we needed however many decades ago, and taking that time to really, think through that together, build those relationships, have those conversations, and restructure or come back based off of the now.
All right, thank you, Fishbowl. We're going to go back to debrief. It's been awesome. Thank you for your brilliance. And Trang will facilitate this part. I will watch the chat, and we have about 10 minutes. So,
okay. All right. Thanks, Rachel. And thank you again to our Fishbowl speakers. I did put it in the chat, and I'm sure it's open now. And does anyone have any specific clarifying questions for the people in the Fishbowl? And I did, at the top of the Fishbowl, put in the names of the folks who are speaking. Any clarifying questions, please use your Zoom hand. That would be very helpful. Don't be shy. We got 10 minutes. It would be great to ask clarifying questions. And obviously you can put your stuff in the chat too. So, wow, everyone knows it. Okay, great. Diane, go for it.
I have a question. Can I ask a question?
Actually, Audrey, Diane has her hand up, and then I'll come to you.
Oh, good.
Okay, Diane.
Hi, Audrey. Yeah, so thanks. It's great to hear from all of you, and great to have these opportunities to talk with each other. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Thanks. So I'm curious, because I've heard about, I listened to the past sessions, and I've heard about a lot of conflict that's happening within the board and leadership of the AEU. And I hear this commitment to relationships and to inclusiveness and to values, and yet it sounds to me, from what I've heard, that conflict has reached a pretty toxic level, and maybe doesn't feel particularly inclusive and to all the people participating on the board. So I'm just curious, has that conflict been worked? What's your perspective on working conflict? I think conflict can be a very productive thing to happen, and I actually worry when there's no conflict. But I also have experience in the Brooklyn Society when conflict got to a toxic level, and we needed and got, with the help of the AEU, an outside intervention from the Albin Institute that really helped us move forward. So I'd be curious to hear how the board is approaching conflict.
Great. Thank you, Diane. So I'm going to ask the Fishbowl participants if one of you can address that. And while you're unmuting yourselves, I'm going to ask If you have not yet, please rename yourself because I know Tom Castanova, I'm calling you out because it says that you're Rachel Pfeffer. So, and I know that was you because you spoke on behalf of Brooklyn. So, and another person's AEU office. We'd love to see, who's responding in the chat and hear your voices and know who you are. So, okay. I see, Jay, you're unmuted. Would you like to answer that question? Or
sure. I mean, I'll definitely take a stab at it. And make sure I want to make sure I heard you correct, Diane, which is that how is the current board handling conflict, or was it how are we going to handle conflict?
Yeah, thanks, Jay. I have both concerns. One is like, so you're actually in a situation where you have conflict. So how are you working with that? And then how does that project how you are going to use, what are your conflict resolution or working with conflict strategies for the future? So thanks.
Thank you. And by the way, your hair is fabulous. Goodness, I haven't seen you in a good while, but your hair is absolutely stunning. One of the things that I will say that the board, we did, so I'll say it in contrast in some of the things that I think will help kind of reveal the operation in which Enhance operates and how we've been working, right? We need a community agreement that needs to be established at the first beginning of the board. There needs to be very clear understanding of folks' roles and responsibilities. And that becomes very clear. There needs to be a clear orientation of what this particular board and this particular movement need. So an onboarding process that is actually meaningful and constructive to the movement. And that also, gives breath, or if you will, catapult us into revisioning. When it comes down to conflict, you're absolutely right. I would say that, we need conflict. I am very concerned about any place of employment that can actually be like, oh, we're a family here. Like, honey, you don't know my family. Right. So we need to always have conflict, right? When we have that, we need to be able to disagree and not also become so disagreeable that we are no communal good. I think a lot of times what has happened thus so far is that we've seen that, we get into such a disagreement that we are no communal good. And then, of course, this work is very complicated. And I want to name that for everyone when I say that when you're on the board, it's not only an operation of professionalism that's happening, it's a level of, it's really personal because there is this other attachment to this as a religious movement, right? And then there's the other thing that this is also vocational. This is a gift-giving kind of volunteer work that is given. When you have those layers, you're going to disagree on multiple things. I know that me and Anya have two different views on possibly, looking at humanism and atheism and how they move in the world. But at the end of the day, it doesn't stop me from working with Anya. It doesn't prevent me from entering a space and maybe saying, I really can't answer that because I'm biased in this place. I think it's very important for us to name our biases. I think it's very important for us to name even when we have them, so that we know when to step aside and get out of the way. We need to be more transparent and accountable.
Okay. Thank you, Jay. I'm sorry, in the interest of time, and I see hands up. So if we could move on, that would be great. Although,
Did I say
let's see. Audrey, did you still have a question? You had your hand up and then you took your hand down. And please be brief. We want to hear from everyone because I also see Vandra and Abby in line. So Audrey, did you have something?
And I also have a couple of questions in the chat, but it's sort of reiterating the same thing. So maybe we can move on.
It's along the idea of actually how conflict happens through language in our communities. And I think there are new languages growing in our world, and how elders and youth connect through language or disconnect through language, language of race and gender. And I'm just interested in how we hold that space for our community to be in dialogue with each other in a growing way, and what kind of educational supports we put in place for that. It's more about the conflict of,
Okay.
Yeah, I can respond to that very quickly. I think that you're definitely on point. I think that one of my focus actually that I do professionally, right, is the understanding of world making. And it's exactly what you just stated. There's definitely many worlds that are unfolding. And that includes, as you just said, race, ethnicity, class, positionality, geographical, migratory experiences. And I think that as we name those realities in the space and move beyond just saying my personal experience is enough and saying, yes, and actually it is not. We need methods, structures, theories, right? And many voices in the space to be able to recognize that, again, difference is not a deficit, it's actually a strength when it's integrated into a relationality and a praxis dimension where we begin to actually honor that. And again, listen deeply to what is being stated and what is not being stated that needs to be put in the center of the conversation.
Thank you, Anthony. Hold on, Vandra. You're on mute. Go ahead and unmute yourself. You're next. Condra, did you want to address something earlier? I'm sorry, I may have cut you off earlier. Did you want to do that?
Oh yeah, that's fine. So to sort of follow up with what Jay said and moving forward, well, attempts have been made to sort of bring down the temperature of the current board. And I think the issue is that everybody sort of has to agree that that's what they want to do, and that, really hasn't been the case. And then understanding roles and responsibilities and conflicts. And there's been a lot of disagreement about who should be doing what. And I think having those conversations early on, right, and setting and saying, like, this is your responsibility, this is my responsibility, and listening. I think the restorative practices that we have been learning have been really helpful. And I think something that we've talked about, like, implementing or practicing going forward, because it does give people a space to listen and not feel the need to respond, hear people out, and build those relationships, because we are all coming from very different experiences. I mean, a simple, there was like a really strong reaction to the word sabbatical for this scenario, right? For some people. And I was puzzled because for me, a sabbatical as a scientist is a period where you go off and you learn how to do a new technique. It's a working period, right? It's not, you're not on the beach sunning yourself somewhere. You're like actively thinking and growing. And so, I certainly have had to understand where people are coming from when they balk at the word. So giving ourselves, I think, making it a priority, right, to heal, to work together, to have those conversations is really where we need to start.
Okay. Thank you so much, Condra, and sorry for cutting off your earlier. Okay, I'm going to go back to the queue. Vander, you're next, and I'm going to ask you again, we don't have much more time, so please keep your questions brief. This is just for clarifying questions. Go ahead.
Actually, it's not. This is not a clarifying question. This is really to just underscore how upset I am. And I really want to call out Carolyn Parker. Carolyn Parker has been, I think, exemplary. And I am just amazed at the sort of, relationships, and aren't we all into relationships, and da-di-da and bitsy-boo. And in fact, there's been this beating up. I want to say beating up the old lady. I really, really, really feel like so impassioned about this. Somebody comes in new, and I will call out you wherever you are, Rachel, because in your presentation.
So Vandra,
I'm so sorry.
Vandra, I'm gonna stop you right there. I really hear your passion. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm gonna go on and move to the next person. Go ahead, Abby.
Yeah, so this is a clarifying question. I am so excited about a positive vision of focusing on relationships, and it's great to see younger people coming forward and all of those things. My question is, in the proposal that Silicon Valley put forward, if I understand it correctly, and the idea of a agreement among board members about behavior towards each other, fabulous. But in the proposal that Silicon Valley put forward, there was a lot of authority given to the board officers as opposed to the whole board. And both in terms of evaluating claims of having broken the covenant, and also just in terms of supervising the organizational development consultant. And I don't understand how that, rather than having that be a full board responsibility, takes us toward actually managing conflict and collaborative decision-making, and towards sustaining relationships in a community where, to be frank, we don't all agree about what this community should be for.
Is there anyone on the fishbowl who would like to address that?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's certainly something that doesn't have to be. I'm not quite sure of the rationale behind just having it be the executive officers. I can tell you that I have personally been, I wouldn't say pushing for, but I think one thing that is helpful is, because we are such a small organization, people have so many connections, is really trying to engage outside expert, facilitation or mediation. And I think when problems do arise, depending on the nature of the problem, that's where we need to go, because they're simple, conflict of interest issues that people simply don't see as conflicts, right? And I think having a more objective perspective is really helpful.
Okay, thank you, Condra. I know we've run out of time for this particular section of the debrief, so I'm just wondering, Rachel, we do have another fishbowl. Can you tell me what you would like to do next?
Yeah, let's talk about this for a second. So the next fishbowl is Carolyn, Dwight, John, Dorothy, and Liz. And I think Carolyn is the only person here. And
Dorothy is here. Dorothy's here.
Dorothy's here, but I don't think Dorothy wants to be in a fishbowl.
Can I make a comment? Can I make a quick comment?
Well, we're trying to figure out our logistics. Dorothy, do you want to be in a fishbowl, or?
I want to make a comment.
Okay, let us figure out our logistics, and can you talk about it in the debrief possibly after we figure out what we're doing?
I just want to make it clear I didn't want to participate in a fishbowl because I was not asked to, and I was only given 2 days notice. Whereas I think the ethical educators had a month's time to think about this, that the regeneration folks, who, by the way, I don't have a position here. I think it was great to hear from the regeneration slate, but the other board members were not given notice of this except for an email that went out late midweek. And I chose not to participate because I did not think it was an equitable situation. I'm not running for the board. I have a year left on my term. I also didn't think I needed to take up any time in this meeting because I'm not running for the board, and it's a listening session. So I wanted to just put that on the record as why I've declined. And of course, John's not here and Dwight's not here. So
Right. So we're going to figure it out. Thank you, Dorothy. I understand. And we can go, I don't want to go back and forth here with you about when emails were sent out and you were invited, and it's fine. We're going to make this work. So thank you. Carolyn, I feel like it's Carolyn.
Invited.
I'm sorry, Dorothy. Please, can I just finish? Carolyn, I feel like it's fair for you to have some time and speak about the same things, that the questions that were brought up to the other fishbowl. I would have been happy to.
You have two hands up. They're still up.
We'll come back to that.
Why?
Because we have a run of show and we're trying to make this work in an organized way.
And you have two remaining questions from the last portion.
And we will get back to that.
So Eleanor, I think we'll have time later, but if you could just let us finish this and figure out the rest of the time, we want to respect everyone's time here. So Rachel, please go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I sent out this kind of, schedule to all the people that participated in the fishbowl. We prepared for it. I just want to respect everyone's time and what the expectation was. That's all. And I'm happy, and I do want the debrief to continue and for questions to continue. And we will have time after the next fishbowl, if there is a fishbowl. So hang in there. Okay, Carolyn, I would love for you and fairly for you to have some time to speak to the questions regarding the future, your vision of the AEU Society's future, why you're engaged in this work. Is it rooted in legacy, or what the why is for you? And what people can count on you for, and is there a scenario or a leadership style that you feel would serve the AEU best in the future?
Thank you.
Hang on, I'm sorry. Can I just offer a suggestion before we move forward? Because I see there are people who want to debrief, and I think it is important to, address some of the questions. Carolyn, if that was a lot that was raised, and the fishbowl, if we're allowed with multiple people. But if you want to limit yourself maybe to 5 to 7 minutes, that would be terrific. And then we could use the rest of the time. I see raised hands from Jackie and Eleanor, and I'm sure we'll have more raised hands too. So just to give you a framework, and then we'll move forward because it's already 12:38. So thank you, Carolyn.
Thank you, Trang. I realize a one-person fishbowl is, I've always wanted to be the center of attention. But
this is it.
Not this way, though. No, sorry. But if I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. We did only get notice on Wednesday around midday, but we did get a full slate of questions, and I found these very interesting questions and timely for the situation. And I, as usual, I want to look at the wording of them. The first question had to do with splitting the assembly. There are some resolutions and some motions that will have us have a later assembly, do part of our work during this session on July 29th, and then sometime later. And they're exactly opposite each other. Some people are saying, pick the scenario, do the budget and the election later. And one of them says, no, do the budget and the election now, but take time later to do the scenarios. And this is where we are in ethical culture, not in polarity, not in opposition, but with a diversity of viewpoints. So for me, that's very energizing and exciting, because more and more people are actively participating in this process right now. So let me just go to the point about there are multiple scenarios, and the question that was written for me was, are you sure you want to govern in any scenario? And let me tell you, it's not really governing. It's more like having a tiger by the tail. And yes, I'm here for another 2 years. Whatever my role may change with the election. But for now, what role I have, and later what role I end up with, I'm still committed to ethical culture. And that's something that is central to who I am and what I want to do. And so legacy is not what it's all about. For me, it's about positive values. And I could, like Casey, I believe a little while ago, told a story. I'd love to tell you the story of how I found ethical culture again, but let me not, because we've only got a couple of minutes to really chat through this, and just say that it was the values of ethical culture when I finally figured out who they were, because in Texas, we never really heard of you, even though I was in the same town with a society that's been here for 25 years. It's just pretty quiet. And when I found ethical culture, it was the values, and it was the fact that they were positive values that really inspired me, that I could say, these are my people. And so that's my why. That's why I'm here. And my vision, well, it takes me astray a little bit. I'm kind of off scenario on this, but my vision is that we begin to do more spreading. I know we don't want to talk about proselytizing. The mission work is a little bit iffy for our personalities. Introverts are not all that sociable anyway, but we need to grow. And one of the ways we need to grow is in our communities. And we have some possibilities in these scenarios. We have the possibilities in our societies to begin looking around and seeing more about what is around us. And as I've been puzzling over this issue of, as we shrink, how do we grow? I guess I'm just sort of coming into the notion of thinking about doing our homework where the emphasis on working near our home base kind of thing. So maybe that's something we can talk about when we start talking about the future in more detail. I know we've spent 19 weeks on the future, but you know what? We still have a few more weeks to talk about it. So let's do that. And as for scenario that has the best outcome, I just got some new ones yesterday. I didn't see them before. And so they were news to me, and I've just skimmed over them. So they're going to need some more study. But I think the scenario that we want, let me put it that way, would be inclusive, so that all of us are part of it, that we're part of the work that has to be done. We're part of the outcomes that are there. I'd like to see a scenario that's flexible, knowing that as we've talked about change in our Sunday schools and in our societies and our relationships, things are changing all the time. Change is a part of daily life. It's a part of life itself. So maybe a little flexibility to pivot if that need arises would be a wonderful thing. And for me, the very most important part of any of these scenarios is the focus on ethical culture. It's not AEU. There's a distinction between AEU and ethical culture. And AEU may be something else next year. It may be different next year. But ethical culture at the center, and call it ethical humanism, call it ethical biocentrism. In any case, ethical culture is where my heart is and where I'd like to see it. And finally, what can you count on me for? With the same thing I've been doing all year, play it as it lays. We started with some things, unfinished business, if you will, that is not that just work that still needed to be done, and a carryover from the past board. I said we'd have continuity and we'll work on it. We'll do it. I didn't quite do it the way some people thought I should, but I did try nonetheless to carry on. And then things changed again. And the idea was, well, I have to change too. I have to work with what I have. It wasn't always easy. I can't claim to be hugely successful at everything, but I did persevere and keep trying. And the perseverance was to try to work in the framework that was there for me. So, want to know what's going to happen next? I don't know, but I'll be here and I'll do my best. Thank you. Was that 5 minutes?
That was almost 7 minutes, but you did great. Thank you, Carolyn.
Okay. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you so much. I think what we're going to do for the rest of the time is a debrief. So I'm happy to lead that, Rachel. So, and I want to thank you, Jackie and Eleanor, for being so patient. If anyone else has any questions, clarifying questions, Carolyn just spoke, other questions, I would appreciate that. And let's try to keep it on topic in terms of, and I know this was a listening session and it would be great to talk about ethical education and the resolutions. Obviously, a lot came down yesterday. Please check them out in the folders that Jake shared. Take some time to look them over, and I'm sure the AEU board and staff will create time so that you can learn more about that, particularly for those delegates who will be going to the Assembly business meeting on July 29th. Okay, Jackie, please go ahead and let's just keep this brief so we have time for other people to speak. Go ahead.
I am, I'm a bit confused about what I've heard in the previous fishbowl about leadership approach, the egalitarian way of handling things, working together, and the executive committee making decisions, and I'm just confused. I'm not seeing how they fit together. That's one thing I'd like some clarification on. And the other one is, it seems to me that we're going to be making a scenario choice at this board meeting. I would like to see if that's the case, and that's what it certainly looks like, and I'm fine with that. I would like to see board members elected that are committed to working on the choice that the membership of this movement has made. And therefore it seems to me that giving some time in between so that people who are running for the board can wrap their minds around the decision that this movement has made, and a commitment to that choice would be beneficial. So I'd say comments on both of those.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. So it sounds like the second part was, I think, separating the decision of the resolution about the AEU future from the board elections is what I'm hearing from you. And that is one of the resolutions that has come forward to have two separate assembly meetings. So that will definitely come to decision for the AEU delegates. And then can someone provide clarification on what it means in terms of the governance? Is that a question for you, Rachel, or Susquehanna, or in terms, I think that's the regeneration proposal.
Well, I think it speaks to the leadership of the board. There are different structural levels where it brings together voices and perspectives at the society level, bringing societies in, having a board, because there wasn't a proposal to change the board right now, but that might be something that during the regeneration process, you look at the governance structure. That's why the regeneration plan gives you time to look and see, what does this governance structure need to be to actually create an AEU for the future. So there might be changes along the way. And so it's more of an agile process. In terms of collaboration, everything is about collaboration. Yes, there are going to be people making decisions, because otherwise you have no movement forward. One needs to make decisions in any organization. I think no one can really argue with that. And if you look at different models of leadership, and we can do some trainings and pass out some education, there are models that are keeping power at the top, not, sharing resources, not communicating. The regeneration process is about focusing on participation, where people can feel engaged and challenged, and decentralizing power. But yes, people will make decisions. So there's both those things. Those are not contradictions. They're just a structure. where relationships will be primary. That is the most important thing in collaboration. Active listening, walking our talk, developing empathy, and focusing on results. These are the elements of collaboration. I don't know if I answered the question.
Does that help you, Jackie? A little bit?
Helps. It does help, yes.
Okay.
I think that I'm perceiving some disrespect of people based on not using the same language, the same terminology.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that bothers me. I appreciate that Chandra comes to this movement with the scientific background, and sabbatical means something to her that it doesn't mean to many of the others of us. Defining terms is so important without being negative about people not understanding what you mean.
Yeah. I think it is important to be respectful in this process because there's a lot of differing opinions. I say that a lot about WES. At WES, Washington Ethical Society, there can be 3 people in the room and 5 different opinions. So that's what I say about WES. But if we can move forward, Eleanor has been very patient. Go ahead, Eleanor.
Thank you for allowing me to unmute myself rather than you muting me as you did. I thought, and I wonder how many people here were under the impression that this was going to be the 3rd in a series of listening sessions about the scenarios. And it wasn't. So I understand you received a couple more within the last couple of days, so none of us had a chance to look at them. Will there be another date set soon when we can all look at these scenarios before the assembly? I had a question only about one because I looked at it as Rachel suggested that we look before today's meeting. And it says that societies will have delegates. Each society will have one delegate to represent them. However, the delegates can't have a vote because the bylaws don't enable it. And yet there would be time to change the bylaws to empower that to happen. So that's a specific question about one item in one scenario. But we've got 68 people here, and I think most of them thought we'd be talking about all the scenarios today. Will you schedule another session? And that question, I guess, is for Carolyn.
Go ahead, Carolyn. And then I think Rachel can also address it too.
One of the things that we just received 2 new proposals yesterday. We finally got all of them proper. Everybody made it in on time, so I'm glad they met the deadline. That was kind of a small panic attack at 3:00 yesterday. But what I'm going to advise those who've submitted new scenarios, particularly Brooklyn and Wes, I'll be writing them to say if they want to hold their own town hall meetings, as Bergen did, to create that opportunity. My understanding is the President's Council is not going to be trying to say, but my understanding is that you're going to be talking to the candidates and not you're pivoting and shifting to that, which is fine. So but that's something to advise that you may end up seeing some additional town hall meetings specifically devoted to the new scenarios. The assembly is ready to start in terms of getting ready for the business meeting. Almost everything has at least 2 preliminary discussion sessions. The scenarios have 3 because we have so many and because they're so complicated. And so those dates are listed on a calendar that Jake has prepared. And in a minute, if you'd like, I'll try to put some links in for you to say when they are. But we tried to make evening sessions and Saturday sessions. Let me just tell you, July 15th is going to be very busy.
So Carolyn, Jake actually already put them in the chat. So
very good, very good. So they're there.
Mhm.
And those discussion sessions are also now separated from the bylaws amendments because there were some implementing bylaws amendments that were needed in terms of one of the scenarios, but there's some additional bylaws amendments that have been submitted. So now we're having extra sessions on the bylaws amendments. So plenty of opportunities to meet again and discuss all of these things, but they will be discussion sessions. That's where we get down to the nitty gritty. And because there are so many scenarios, there's not going to be a lot of time for each scenario. So you're going to get a lot of that. Okay, we got to cut off and whatever.
Yeah.
What'll be, sorry, I'm so sorry, trying what will be the case though, is that once you've been in those discussions, you'll also know who you need to be asking questions of. And I'm pretty sure we'll be sharing emails and a lot of discussion will go on in between times. What do you really mean? What
right.
That kind of thing.
So if I could follow up with what you're saying, Carolyn, thank you so much for that. And thank you so much to Jake and to Rachel, our staff members. They've been working to get the assembly together. There are 3 dates. This is specifically to you, Eleanor. There are 3 dates in which they're talking about the resolutions. Okay, July 8th, July 15th, and July 18th. So there will be time. Now, like you said, like multiple people have said, these things came in, including from Wes, yesterday at the end of the finishing line. So that's why, and this meeting had been planned for weeks. So that's why we couldn't get, it's kind of last minute to get these folks to speak, like particularly Wes and John Dakin was one of the authors of that, of one of those proposals. So, he couldn't be here today. So I think that it would behoove us to all, again, you have access to the Google folders to look over the proposals / resolutions and come with your questions to those sessions. Okay. Also, I will share the President's Council. This is the meeting of Society Presidents. We'll be meeting July 6th. And we are not going to be focusing on these because we didn't know there are going to be all these additional resolutions. We'll actually be talking with board candidates at that time. And that's specifically for the board presidents. Okay, and I'm going to, we do have to end soon. So I see a hand. Oh, I think I see John. So go ahead, John. And Linda?
It's actually my question, and it actually is about the candidates, meet the candidates. Can you clarify, or somebody clarify, will all the candidates be at both sessions? And will that be an open forum for questions from the audience that we can ask questions of the candidates?
Both sessions for Meet the Candidates will include everybody who's on the ballot. And I believe that the Board Development Committee is hosting those meetings and they should be making it open for questions. I believe that will happen.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Definitely. Just to reiterate what Carolyn said, there are a number of sessions. Jake put the link to the delegate webpage, lots of meetings set up for you to learn more about the budget, the people running for the board, and there are several contested of the board elections and the officers, and then obviously the resolutions. So, so I know we're really close to the end of our time. Are there any other burning questions that people have that they can briefly share? Okay, well, thank you. I'm going to end the debrief here and turn it back to you, Rachel.
Thank you, Trang. Thank you so much for co-hosting with me. Thank you, Jake, for always doing amazing technology. We are going to be ending the recording, and we will send it out to you along with the chat. And thank you so much for coming, and see you again soon in the coming weeks, where we can look at the scenarios and budgets and have more time to talk. Thank you so much. Take care. Have a great day. Have a good weekend.